Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Social Marketing Academy. I'm really excited about today's show because we're talking about something a lot of you have been asking me about. It seems really interesting lately that a lot of people have a little bit of extra time on their hands to think about different marketing ideas and kind of how they can really market themselves to a wider audience. And I'm always saying, like, well, why don't you start a podcast? Not that everyone deserves to have a podcast. If you have the right content and the right POV, a podcast can be a great way for you to connect with your audience. And that's why I have my boy Luis Diaz on the show with us. Luis is a fantastic expert on podcasting, and he's going to be answering all of the questions that you've shared. So, Mr. Diaz will be joining us shortly. But before we get into all of the wonderful podcasting content that we have on this podcast, see how meta is that? Um, I want to thank you for joining us. If you are coming to the show for the first time, thanks for watching or thanks for listening. We do the Social Marketing Academy as both a live feed as well, live and on demand, as well as a live and on demand podcast. So if you are watching or listening to us, there's tons of other great content. What I'm doing is I'm opening up my book of contacts to you. All of my fantastic digital marketing and just traditional marketing, offline marketing, all of my marketing network friends and family to give you free information and free consultations. So please take advantage of this. Take a look at our past shows. If you're on our website, one of the easiest ways of going is to go salesandmarketing.com. There you'll be able to take a look at all of our past shows on our podcast page. There's links to all of the experts there. If you see an expert that you'd like me to help make an introduction to, I'm happy to do that. Just reach out. There's a contact form on our website as well as our chat. All of that stuff eventually gets to me, as does all of our social media channels. So if you would like to be a guest on the show, if you have a question and you want me to connect you with an expert, or if you have a topic that you would like to see us cover in a future episode, please get in touch with me. Any of the social media links on gosalesandmarketing.com will help you get directly to me. Okay, so ask me some questions. While you're on the website, we do have an e-course available right now for free. So definitely go and check that out. Absolutely free, 7 days of fantastic social media marketing information. So let's turn it away from me, your fearless host, Christopher Tompkins, and on to our guest. Luis Diaz is the founder of podcast Domination and the author of How to Get Your First 100,000 Downloads in 100 Days. Louis launched and consulted for over 60 podcasts and helped his clients generate over 6.5 million downloads. He's helped some of the most well-known entrepreneurs and personal brands online build their podcast, from NFL athletes, Olympic medalists, nine-figure entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and many more thought leaders across a dozen or more industries. Now, when we were putting forth all of these different questions in terms of podcasting, the number one thing I was thinking to myself was, I have to bring Louis on. Here he is. Hey, Louis, welcome to the Social Marketing Academy.
Christopher, thanks for having me on, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, no problem. I was just telling people about your really impressive like book of business and what you've been working on. But you have a few words to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I guess to give you not to double up on the intro, but really and truly, I guess to kind of give an overview of the background, I guess I would say is,
Yeah.
long story short, I was a personal trainer turned podcaster, and so I kind of fell into this on accident. Never really got wanted to be this in the beginning, but it turned into a point of something that I was super curious about, interested in, and just got dove deeper into the rabbit hole when it came to the possibilities with podcasting. So for us, the last 3 years of podcasting has been really about helping people figure out the best way to leverage the platform. As you know, Christopher, like, it's a great networking tool, but it's also going to be a great driver for bringing in new leads, but also bringing in partnerships and things like that. So for us, it's been a really fun exploration, and I think we're just getting started with podcasting, because if we've seen in the last couple of years, it's been continually to grow and grow up and to the right. So yeah,
Yeah,
let's
it's really interesting because one of the things that I've been seeing, and
mm,
and we have some great questions from the audience, and we'll get to them eventually. But I have questions. So one of the things that I've noticed is that let's talk about like maybe 5 years ago. 5 years ago, someone would come to my agency because we specialize in social media, and they say,
Mm,
well, I have this wonderful book, and I've written it, and I obviously you've written the book to position yourself as an expert so that you can go
right.
out and then be known for your knowledge and your experience. And what I have been seeing is people kind of waking up to the idea that, wow, writing a book is expensive. It takes a long time.
Mm,
It's very expensive. And then also after you put all that expense into it, people start drinking the Kool-Aid that they need to make it a bestseller, which would
yeah.
incur more monetary outlays. But I've seen people come to me recently and saying like, "Hey, I have this podcast. I also do this," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" So the podcast is the new book in a way
Mm,
for some of these
yeah.
thought leaders. So a lot of people out there, I think, over the last like kind of because 2020 was so slow, and I think a lot of people were looking at more
Mm,
out of the box ideas on how to market themselves. I think I've seen
mm,
that with the conversations I've had with prospects during discovery calls. A lot of people have started kind of thinking like, well, what about a podcast? What is that? Do I have what it takes? Do you think that if someone's been in business for a while and podcasts have been around and now they're all blowing up, is it too late for someone who's interested to start their own podcast and get branded as an expert on that medium? Is it too late for someone to do that?
yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. I had this question earlier today from someone else. So it's something that we've been talking about a lot lately,
All right.
especially in my neck of the woods. And the answer for me is always like podcasting is something that it's never too late. It's not too late. Like
Right.
people were saying it's too late in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not too late if you're willing to put a year into it. Like yes, you have to be an expert in your field. So if you've been doing whatever you've been doing for a long time, there's no reason for you not to be able to use a podcast to position yourself as an expert, just as you would a book. However, the success or failure of that is going to be determined by like if you're going to stick with it, because we've all seen those podcasts where they come and go 15, 20, 30 episodes in, and they're done. So I find with podcasting, what kind of keeps people going is their ability to kind of recreate themselves and find new ways to new things to talk about on the podcast. Whether that's
Yeah.
doing a series of doing different seasons and having a different theme for every season,
Mm-hmm.
or interviewing a certain like type of people. Like for example, if you're an expert in maybe nutrition, you can bring on a certain have different seasons dedicated to different type of foods or nutrition experiments and things like that. So there is a number of ways to do it, but I find with podcasting, it's not too late. And the key is asking yourself, hey, am I going to be able to stick this out at least for a year? And for me, that's if not, then it's okay. Then maybe it's not the best avenue. But if you are and you feel like you have the ability to stick with it for a year, then you should be. There's no reason why you couldn't start one.
And I think the one thing that you pointed out, I think is really good for people that need accountability coaches because they can never stick with what they've promised themselves to do. I think
Right.
the idea of seasons is very attractive for someone
Mm-hmm.
who only can handle so much. Because there's
Yeah.
different ways that, I mean, obviously you can do live podcasts, but you can pre-record them and master them and put them out whenever you want.
Yeah. Exactly.
For example, if I'm going to be in a time crunch, I might do 3 or 4 episodes in like with 1 and 2 days, and then put them
Mm-hmm.
out over the next month or so. So yeah. But I do feel that one of the things that is one of the biggest drawbacks is people they don't understand that there's consistency involved
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
they really don't understand how their audience is consuming their
Yeah.
content. Because, for example, if I'm listening to a podcast and I know it comes out on Thursday and it's not out until Saturday, I'm like, you lazy piece of, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I wanted that
Yeah.
now because I had the time already. I have my like,
Yeah.
I like creature comfort. So it's like when I was going to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. One of the things though is I've had some questions about this before too. People are saying, well, I want to start monetizing all of my channels. And that's one of the biggest digital trends that we're seeing this
Mm.
year is all of the platforms moving to include some form of monetization. Like
True.
Twitter's going to start doing some pay gating. Facebook is starting to do it already. All these different platforms. So people will say, well, how can I monetize my podcast? But then you look at their audience and it's very small. So if someone has a small
Hmm.
audience, what is their opportunity to monetize?
It's a great question. When I started out, I had a small audience
Yeah.
and I was able to monetize, and so there's a couple different ways. But if we're talking to experts and people who are in client-based businesses, or they're doing done-for-you services, or they're working with one-on-one clients, usually for a higher price point, where the work is very like they have a high skill in it, right? And that's why they're getting hired to do this. Um, Podcasting, you can monetize your podcast with a small audience, and a couple ways. Number one, we've all seen it, and we've all heard of it, is where you bring on that ideal client, or that ideal person you want to work with, have them on the show, and then you figure out a way to either help them on the back end. Typically, for me, that happens where well, I have a show that I do this. We bring on people who are great fits for agencies, or people we want to partner with and work with on a deeper level. And at the end of the episode, I'll say, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? And I leave it very open and broad like that. And if I can help them or connect them with someone, great, I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll follow up with them in 1 or 2 months, and see kind of where they're at and figure out if maybe there's another way for us to partner then. Case in point, one of the things that we were just teaching the other day to our clients was how what I do is, with all my interviews, all my interviews show, I have a list of every guest that's ever been on there. So whenever we're rolling out a new product or a new promotion or a beta program, I will look at that list of all of our past guests and say, like, who would be a fit for this program? Who should I reach out to and see if this is potentially something they would be open to testing out or trying out, or something that would help them. So that's one way you can monetize a podcast, even if you have a micro audience, is through the guest list, and making sure that guest experience is amazing. So they like the show, like them booking the show, getting on the podcast is seamless and simple, kind of like what you've done here, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Is you've made it really simple and seamless. And then also the follow up on the back end is a nice experience, meaning
Right.
they're getting the audio and all the details sorted out and sent to them. They're not having to discover that the podcast went live, and they didn't even get told about it, or no one told them that it went live. So making sure all those elements of your interview process are seamless and easy, and a nice experience. So for me, that's one way you can easily monetize
Yeah.
a podcast, is like that guest list, and being intentional around having a list. Like, I use a spreadsheet and I have all their names, and I also have notes next to all of them. Like, oh, like Tom said he was looking for a YouTube marketing agency, or he's going to start YouTube ads soon. Maybe I can connect him with my friend Brian, who runs Frank Kern's ads. So like who in your how can you leverage your network
Mm-hmm.
to help these people out? That's the first one. The second one, for those who are experts in field, and I have a case study for this. Was we had a client who had less than 200 downloads, and after 8 episodes, so it wasn't a huge show. 8 episodes, 200 downloads total. But she was an expert in her field, and she had her quote unquote worst episode landed her a 5-figure per month client. So
Funny.
yeah, the episode that she thought was the ugliest, or sounded the worst, was the one that booked her a phone call with somebody who was the right
Funny
fit.
how that works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what you think is your best content may not be always your
Yeah.
best content, and vice versa. So putting out episodes, I think, and specifically around the problem that your perfect client has. So for example, if you're in the let's just say payment processing business, and you have a podcast episode on how to reduce your chargebacks, that's going to be a really, really, really valuable episode to a company that's doing a lot of volume in terms of payments, and they're really worried about getting a lot of chargebacks. So if you can solve that one problem for that person who's probably doing, if you're worried about chargebacks and that's a big part of your business, then you're probably doing 7, 8, 9 figures in revenue. So thinking about putting out episodes that are, I would say, going to solve that problem for that perfect customer. That's the second one. That's not really a monetization path, but that's a way to bring in the right kind of leads and the right kind of people, and get exposed and in front of the right kind of people. And there's tons of things you can do with that episodes, in terms of like putting it in front of people using ads, or using getting someone else with a bigger list to share that podcast episode. You can pay for access on someone's email list to promote your podcast episode. If you wanted to get it in front of the right people. So there's a couple of ways you can, kind of like put steroids into that, inject into that podcast episode to get in front of the right people to trigger more leads or more sales.
So just with that in mind, okay, so what came first, chicken or egg here? So should you be growing your audience first before you think about monetization? I mean, obviously I would say that we both would agree that you should be doing some shows and getting some things under your belt before you do anything really, really meaningful. But once you kind of get things down pat and you're ready to kind of start like actively building, do you think that looking for monetization first, second, or in tandem? Like, how do you feel that should work?
I think because my experience was I was able to monetize the show without having a huge audience. So I'm glad I didn't spend a lot of time trying to build this audience before making offers or before looking to monetize or put out calls to action. So I think you can monetize before having a huge audience. Of course, audience building is something where, as entrepreneurs, we're always doing that. We're always trying to grow our followings. So it's something that's going to happen. It's going to happen, from day one. We're always going to be trying to build that audience.
Of course.
So I personally think you can make money. You can monetize your show through guesting, first of all, through bringing on the right kind of fits as guests initially. Without having a big audience at all. So, and I know that for me, that's been my experience, and for a lot of other clients as well, it's been an experience with them too. So I don't think you need to have a huge audience to do it, because at the end of the day, it's funny because like we're never satisfied as entrepreneurs with the size of our audience. Like we could always have a few extra thousand followers or a few extra thousand people on our email list. Yeah. So there's never going to be a point where we're we've got a big enough audience. We don't need to worry about that anymore. So
yeah, no, I completely understand. And I completely agree with you. It's because it's really interesting because a lot of people that are coming out, they're kind of like, well, how can I become this person? And it's someone that like it's like a rub a lamp. It's you're not going to be able to become that person, because it's just the same thing like when like years ago when people would like call up PR agencies and say like, okay, like what do you want to do? And then like, I want to be a guest on Oprah. What?
Good luck.
It's the same thing. Let's keep our realities in check. I mean, everyone, I think with podcasts, if you really invest yourself in the process, you have a plan, you can connect it in many ways to your business, you will grow and it will be successful. But you can't just immediately think that you're going to go viral, because, oh my God, someone said this to me the other day. They were talking about going viral, and I said, well, I hate talking about that because it's always like a letdown. I'm basically saying like, that's probably not going to happen for you, but it could. Look, we could try. Yeah. And they said, I don't want to go viral. I want to go COVID. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't know if I can help you go COVID with this idea. But anyway, I digress. So another question that came up from the audience was a promotion one. And it was, we were talking about growth a minute ago. How do you promote and grow your podcast successfully in a world that has like 2 million, 3 million plus podcasts?
Right. That's a great question. So for me, because there's so many ways we can go paid, we can go partnerships, we can look at organic traffic. I like to look at it in 3 different layers. So kind of like level 1, level 2, level 3. And I'll think about this as level 1 is like basic, like what are you doing on a week-to-week basis to promote your podcast to your general organic audience? That's your Facebook audience, your email list, your Instagram audience, your Twitter. What is that pool of existing people who are around you? That's level 1. So on a week-to-week basis, kind of covering our lowest hanging fruit. Are we doing regular promotions and regular invitations to sending people to our podcast and promoting our episodes regularly? That's kind of like bare bones. We can all do that. There's no excuses why you can't do that. That's level 1 promotion to our audience. Probably everyone here knows that. Level 2, the next rung up is really around creating space for like JVs and partnerships. So are we making offers to go on other people's podcasts? Because that's a great way to send traffic back to our show. Are we getting on maybe Clubhouse, or getting on speaking events, or getting on doing panels with other experts in our field. So that's more of like the partnership JV route, where we're looking on getting and tapping into other people's audiences. So we've got
Mm-hmm.
level 1, organic, our audience. Level 2 is partnerships and podcast guesting. And then level 3 is really around paid traffic. So with paid traffic, I think a decent amount of people know this now, but there are a lot of podcasts now, new podcast directories that are coming out with paid opportunities for podcasters to promote their show for a small fee. So anywhere from, I've seen it where it's like $50 to upwards to $3,000 to promote your podcast in front of millions of people who are hitting that podcast app to listen to shows. So, and if depending on your budget and depending on your goals, you can use a mix of all three. So for promoting a podcast today, let's just say if I was going out with a brand new podcast and my goal was to grow it as fast as possible, I would make sure, number one, that our level 1 stuff, our level 1 organic marketing activities are going to be taken care of. There's going to be posts probably 2 to 3 times a week.
Yep.
And then I would probably not worry about the second level as right now. I would want to put my time in it, put my resources into advertising on places like Podcast Addict, advertising on places like Overcast, advertising on places like I think Player FM. Now have an opportunity for people to promote their podcast there as well, which will a little bit more expensive, but to grow it as fast as possible, those are the kind of the routes I would go when it comes to the podcast promotion.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really important element to remember. If you are going to if you do want to throw some gasoline on the growth of your podcast, you do have to allocate some money that you can utilize for advertising. It's not going to, now you have the ability to do this. And yes, I mean, obviously monetizing is great, but if you want to get on these platforms that are really widely recognized, you have to understand that there is going to be an advertising strategy that you're going to have to deploy. And they're not free because advertising costs money, everybody. I mean, I still after having been my agency for 14 years, I still am shocked when someone comes to me and I say, well, and we're going to do $1,000 in Facebook advertising. And they say, how much is that going to cost? And I said, $1,000. And it's going to cost you $1,000. Well, what do we need that money for? Because do you think that, like, let's think back to the old days when when computers weren't there? Magazines had ads and you have to pay for them. So and also what's really great though, is that if you are open to that, there's a lot of new mediums that are opening up for advertising to cross promote your podcasts. Yes. I mean, there's some, I've seen podcast interviews on many of the different streaming apps. So obviously we're paying a lot of money for those ones, but if you really want to go big, you can go big, but still have that advertising budget available. How do you, like you said before, if you want to grow your podcast, one of the great ways to do it or monetize it and grow your network is to be a guest in other people's podcasts. How do you suggest people go about that haven't done that before?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I'll share what's working for us. And I learned this from a friend of mine named Christine McAllister. She's been on like hundreds of podcasts by now, and she taught me the strategy. And really, it's focused. It's by putting your focus on the the host. So if you want to get on someone's podcast, what I typically do is I will research, I'll listen. I'll usually I'll pick a couple of podcasts that I want, and then I'll listen to them, and I'll be kind of like, I'll take my time. So I'll listen to them for a couple of months. When I feel I'm ready, I will shoot them a one-pager, almost like a one-pager email that has like everything you need to know. So a couple of things you want to include in that email are the potential title for the episode. So make it easy for the host. Tell them what you want to talk about, and that's going to be a win-win for their audience. Yes. Right? Make it easy for the host. So tell them what's the episode title or potential titles you could talk about. Tell them other places you've been featured so that they know that like you're just not a newbie. They want to have some trust. They want to kind of feel safe in the fact that this isn't your first rodeo. You want to let them know that, hey, you're going to promote this podcast, because the fact of the matter is we all know as podcasters that it's not easy to grow your show. It's also not guaranteed that the guest is going to reciprocate the work you put in to building this podcast. So you have to have a little empathy and show respect to the host that and let them know, hey, we're gonna promote your show too because we recognize the fact that you taking this time to interview us and the money to edit the podcast and the money to do the hosting isn't free. So I think it's a couple of those things. And then for me, I always like to throw some fun things in there. I throw a video in there, like a personalized video, that just shows that you're human and that like it's not a spam email. This is unscalable things that that separate you from the other people that pitch them. Because I know, Christopher, you get pitched all the time probably, and you get a lot of people who will use a third-party agency or they'll use, which is fine, but like you still want to send a personalized video, if someone else is doing it for you. So those are a couple of key pieces I include there. That video, a tip I found really helpful is using a software called Vidyard. It's just like it's almost like Loom for your phone, where you just shoot a personalized video and just 35, 40 seconds saying, hey, I love your show. I've been listening for a few months. Wanted to just shoot you a personalized video just to say hello and that hope you have an awesome week. Maybe it's something as simple as that. And that will get you, at the very least, it'll get you a no with a personalized response. Like not their executive assistant. It'll be like, hey, I saw your video. Thanks. At this time, we're not taking guests. So that's what I do for my personalized pitches. Make it personal to them. Give them everything they need to know on you and why they should invite you on the show, and then a personalized video to make sure that they know it's not like a copy paste email that we've all probably sometimes received in the past.
I think those are two great tips, because one one of the things, like I'm on both sides of it, right? So I'm finding guests and I'm also taking guests. So one of the two things that you've said that I really resonate with me is that give me everything that's going to make my life easier, as if you're trying to get onto the show. But also what I do as if you want to get people on your show on a regular basis and get quality people, don't make it so damn hard. Don't give me a form that I have to go to the website and then I have to fill out 65 different fields. You know what? I'm sorry, folks, but I see that and I'm just like, meh, I'll go somewhere else. And of course, some people will do that, but unfortunately, the people that might be able and have the bandwidth to do that are thirsty little turtles that are not the best people for you to have on your show. So making it easy just kind of makes it doesn't make you, I think sometimes podcasters can get a little uppity and feel like they need to have like a layer between the masses and themselves. And I personally, I mean, yes, I may use one of my assistants to help me out, keep things going, but I'm always readily available to answer questions. And I think that is making it easy for both ends. From both ends is the way that things move. The relationship moves faster, I guess to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so another question we have is like, how about some common mistakes a new podcaster would make? What have you seen? What are the biggest rookie mistakes that you've seen?
Yeah, great. It's a good one because I think this can save people a lot of time and effort and frustration. So a couple of things I will say from a marketing perspective, having really boring artwork, and that's because if you look inside of Apple Podcasts, there's so much noise, so much going on in that platform that if you don't have something that stands out, your podcast is not going to really get clicked on a lot. So really boring artwork. Some couple tips for artwork, I would say, if we're asking, we're staying there for a second, is I like to use colors like reds, yellows, and oranges because those are kind of fast colors that will pop. When you're scrolling in Apple Podcasts, I've noticed, especially in the B2B space, there's a lot of blues, a lot of blue, a lot of shades of blue. So I stay away from blue generally, and I like to incorporate some kind of fast color in there to get people to stop. So that's what, if you look at Gary Vee's artwork, it's like red and yellow. It's like it's not the prettiest thing, but it sticks out. And that's what it does. It stops the scroll. So that's the first piece there. The second piece, in terms of mistakes, is having a really long intro. So if you have a really long intro and I'm brand new to your show, I don't care yet because I don't know if I'm going to like this show. So I want to I'm probably gonna hit skip anyways. To that, if I know how to hit the skip button in my podcast app.
Hmm.
So once with your intro, you want that to be 10 to 25 seconds tops. Um, and there are some nuance times where you can go over this. That's totally fine. But I would say keep your intro as short as possible so that you can get into the content faster. For my show, I know I have a little hook at the beginning, so I have like a custom piece where it's like, in this episode you're gonna learn X, Y, and Z, and then that way I can get people to stick around to listen to the intro,
Of course.
or that way they'll be incentivized to stay after that. So too long of an intro, boring artwork, and then if you're for in the B2B space, I would say not having a clear call to action, like not having a clear objective for each episode.
Hmm.
Whether that's we're sending traffic to our Facebook group, whether that's we're sending traffic to book a call with us, or we are promoting our next event or our book, having a
Right.
really clear intention, and making sure it's known. Like, it's okay to talk about your products and services on your podcast, but just make sure it's very clear. And sometimes you leave a podcast listening, you're like, I don't really know what the point of that episode was.
Ah,
That's what we don't want, right? So
yeah,
having
yeah,
clear
yeah.
intentions for every episode, and clear call to action are probably the third thing I would say in terms of mistakes for podcasts.
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I love the tip of kind of giving like a snap. In this episode, you're going to learn this, this, and this. I think that that's really hot because I think a lot of people bury the lead, thinking that, oh, I have 30 minutes to fill. This is not a freaking TED Talk, people.
Yeah.
This is a podcast. So,
Yeah.
even if it's one person, if you're just doing it as yourself, I still kind of give them. And also another thing that's really helpful, and I'm really remiss in doing this too, but I'm we're asking questions a lot of the time, but reintroduce the topic
Hmm.
if you do have a guest. I forget to do it all the time, but no podcaster is perfect. One thing though, two things actually, I'd like to dive into. I have a couple more questions about.
Sure.
So the picture you were talking about, the kind of the profile image, the logo of the show.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think it's important if you're trying to position yourself as an expert that you must be on that cover as a picture?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've had this happen a lot with clients,
Mm,
and it comes down to whether you want to be the face of the brand. Like, are you gonna sell this thing?
yep.
And,
Yep.
and I've even had people with personal brands have sold their companies fine, so it may not be a huge factor. So, do you want to be that face? And that depends on your personality type.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I have my face on my cover because I know like people. I think for most people, it's going to be yes. Like you should have your face on your cover because if you're doing high ticket B2B sales, people are buying you. Like they're buying your personality, your style, your unique IP or method.
Yep.
So 9 times out of 10, I would say it's probably going to be yes. You probably want your face on there. If this is a brand, like we've done some brands podcasts and some other bigger companies, so like they have their logo or like the topic of the podcast on there,
Of
something
course,
a
yeah.
little bit more general. So just depends on you, but for most personal brands or experts, you're gonna want your face on there.
Now, another thing that you mentioned was kind of having like some sort of call to action, some sort of CTA, and maybe a conversion point that you really want to push.
Yeah.
What do you feel like if someone's starting out with a podcast? What's like one of the best things that they could do to drive conversion? Like what
Mm.
could they give away or offer that you've seen really pulls on the podcast audience?
Yeah, this is a good one. So,
Mm,
I'll recommend two here.
okay,
One that
great.
I've seen work is an offer to do like a free call, and not like a sales call, like a hey, we're doing a monthly get together, where it's like a Zoom call. It's almost like a clubhouse essentially,
Yeah,
and you have to opt in to join this monthly networking call where it's like the host of the podcast is there, and it's almost like a general discussion networking room. That one is great because people who listen to the podcast, they probably want to come and meet you. They want to listen. They want to ask you
right.
questions. They want to kind of finally meet the person behind the mic, and that kind of a monthly or bi-weekly. I have a friend who does them bi-weekly where he calls it they call it Pod Pals. Is the name of his how he's coined the
Hmm.
networking group, and he does them bi-weekly, and you have to opt in to get the Zoom link, and then you get invited to the call and it gets booked on your calendar. And that's a great way to A, meet people who are
That's
listening to the
great.
podcast, but also B, collect emails.
Mm-hmm.
So for conversions, like because people want to connect and they want to engage,
Yeah.
especially in this COVID world that we're living in.
Yeah.
That's one good one. The second one that I've seen work really well is offering a checklist. Offering a checklist of some sort. Those are really work really well for us. Like it's usually like a podcast launch checklist. So if maybe you're a coach or consultant and like helping people launch books, it could be a book launch checklist, or it could be a number of things, anything with a checklist. Those work typically really well. The question is how you deliver them. So we've seen clients, they'll deliver a lead magnet simply by saying, "Hey, shoot me a message in Instagram, and with the word book, and I'll give you the free book," and that typically can work really well. Or if you want to have like a traditional like landing or squeeze page, that can work well too. And the benefit there is that like you can retarget that traffic with paid media, right? If they show up on that page. So those are two of the best ones. One for like people who want to connect. So it just depends on your audience, or other ones where it's like a checklist of some sort or a very high value resource.
Yeah, I think those are both great ideas. And one of the things that you've brought up a couple times is Clubhouse. And I kind of wanted to see where you feel that Clubhouse sits within this landscape. What are your thoughts on the platform, and where do you feel like is it a complement? How do you feel that it works with podcasts?
Right. This is a great question. We've had some clients where they'll take their Clubhouse recordings and they'll just use them as podcasts. I don't know if that's the best idea. Just because
I don't love that.
It's almost like, you're recording a candid conversation that has no direction. Like, there's some good gems in there, but like nobody really knows.
How nicely put. That's exactly what it is, right?
Exactly. It's just people are popping in and popping out, and like, I don't know. I don't know if I like that. I'm a bit more strategic and structured. So I do like Clubhouse because it gives connection. Like you can get in front of some really cool people. I met some really cool podcasters I've only been following for years. I never got a chance to meet them. And now you hop in a room and you can talk to them by pressing a button. That's really cool. I love that. When it comes to people say, is it going to like take over podcasting? Answer is no. Podcasting is on-demand content. Clubhouse is kind of like you got to go see what the market's giving you, and if there's no good rooms open, then you're kind of out of luck. So it's completely different game. So think about like Netflix versus like live TV. Like Netflix is anytime, anywhere. Live TV is a scheduled time, and if you miss it, too bad. So it's a great tool for if you want to like. I'll tell you this, for podcasters or people who are looking to launch a podcast. You can use Clubhouse to bring on great guests to your show. So go on Clubhouse, find the rooms that have great people, talk to those people, and then afterwards you invite them to your podcast. So that's what I've done that a few times, and that's a great way to find great guests without having to go and search them, shoot them an email, shoot them a Zoom link, follow up with them, just find them on Clubhouse. So it's a way better shortcut to finding great guests or getting on podcasts.
It's kind of like how I was thinking, because we have like an agency podcast, a Clubhouse that we do that's just kind of like all of us talking about everything that we've been going through in the last week, and then people just jump on and just like comment and stuff. But the one of the things that I was thinking about, and we came up in the one that we did the other day, and it was getting all of the different tools and all the different elements of every social media platform and then putting them against one another to show how they all have basically the same thing and what holes each platform has. Like total nerd kind of like conversation, right? But but yeah, I mean, come on, I'm a nerd. So we were talking about podcasts because we're like, where the hell does Clubhouse live? Because Clubhouse now it's coming into Facebook, it's coming into Reddit, it's going into all of these different the technology is being mimicked. And I personally think Clubhouse is like an Instagram story and a podcast is something from the grid. Like I feel that Clubhouse is kind of like instant gratification, fast, smash in the pan, and it's gone. Whereas podcasts are there. They're a part of your history. You can see the archive. It's available to you. It's more tangible. So having these conversations, I think, are really valuable. But I like what you said. This is a great place to mine for guests. It's a good place to listen also how people are talking to one another. I think that's
Mm.
really interesting too. If you are struggling with your interview technique, um, whereas some of the rooms are just like people jumping on a soapbox and just talking. I mean, I put one on the other day and I was like laughing out loud. This guy was just, he was running out of things to say and he was just talking on fumes. And it was just,
Yeah.
yikes. So Clubhouse is a little, it can be a little dicey, but it's all going away. So
Okay.
you'll never have any proof that he was a blowhard.
This is
But
true.
so, in terms of any other, is there any other tips or tricks that you could throw in? Is there any other things that you'd like to want, if like someone who's thinking about starting a podcast, like, is there
Mm.
anything else that you'd say to them?
Yeah, I would say one of the things I always tell people starting a podcast is to get really clear on the goal before launching a podcast. Because, like,
Yep.
9 times out of 10, when I ask people why you want to launch a podcast, it's like, I want to generate leads, I want to build a brand authority, I want to, the laundry list of things. And it's like, that's all great. But if we don't pick one outright, the top one, we're really not going to really succeed at any of them. So get really clear as to the goals. Like in 6 months, where do I want to be with my downloads if that's important to you? Or
Mhm.
maybe I want to have it interview 25 guests, and who are those people on my list? So whatever that goal is for you, I know depending on your business model and
Mhm.
your industry, that's all going to be very different. But once you nail that down, it's going to take a lot of pressure off your shoulders to try and, so that way you're not trying to like hit all these vanity metrics or arbitrary numbers.
Right.
Get clear on the goals that are important to you. Like I had a client who his whole goal is he wanted to hit 50 episodes and then he wanted to hit 100 and 200. And now he's up to 20,000 downloads a month and he's doing great.
Wow.
But initially he just wanted to hit volume because he knew for him that was, if he could hit 50 episodes in like 3 months, he's gonna have a lot of momentum.
Right.
And I didn't really, at first I thought he was weird, but he was smarter than me. So I was, my hats off to, I tip my hat to him. But whatever the metric is for you, pick it, stick with it, and go.
Yep, I completely agree with you. I think that also, I think having a goal as to what you want to do, also being able to be realistic with your schedule and what is needed to actually produce a quality podcast. I
Yes.
think, this is a good one for you, and I want to, just because I'm asked this all the time, and I'm just so, I just don't want to send one more email full of freaking Amazon links.
Yeah.
What is the absolute minimum you need? What do you need to start this? Like what equipment? Like people were like, "Oh, I'm going to get like a mixing board and I'm going to get,"
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, no.
because people get really excited about obviously buying shit for the podcast.
Yeah.
But what do you think like bare minimum? Like what do you need?
Yeah, bare minimum for an interview like this. We're doing interview shows like this, like which I have a very low budget setup. So I have a $100 microphone, ATR 2100. Go to Amazon, type that in, ATR 2100 microphone. That's all you need from a
Mhm.
microphone perspective.
Yep.
Besides that, you need a webcam, which most of your laptops are gonna have already.
Hmm.
If you want to get a little bit of a fancier one, the one I'm using is a Logitech 1080p, which is
Hmm.
$100, I think 120, something like that, on Amazon. And that's really it. Outside, so I guess for hardware and stuff like that, that's all you need. And I'm sure Christopher, you can say like you don't need a mixing board, you don't need a audio interface. Like I've seen people go down that route too, and then they end up never launching the podcast because it just gets
It's
too.
the way. I mean, come on. I don't want to learn how to use that. Like I
No,
just want to
no.
turn something on and do it. I'm freaking busy. I need to do this quick and fast.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
exactly.
think the equipment immediately, it's beautiful. I mean, oh, let's buy like a Blue Yeti because that's the one that comes up in the number one result. It's like, do I need a Blue Yeti? Do I need a Blue Yeti? I'm like, I don't even have a Blue Yeti. I'm using like a $70 dealie right here, and this is working absolutely fine for me.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had people want to spend thousands on a new studio. I'm like, this is your first podcast. What's the what's the rush to blow that money? Besides that, software, you either need Zoom if you're
Mhm.
doing interviews, or you can use a company called Squadcast, which has a bit better audio quality,
Yep.
so they say. And then for hosting, you need a place to host these files. I use Captivate, which is like $19 a month.
Yeah.
And so that's all I need. All you need for those there who want to get started, bare minimum, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because this is not a radio show. We're not going out off of the airwaves. I don't need like a freaking producer like giving me like the countdown on when I'm going live on air. You're
Right.
your own producer. But what I would say is that anybody out there that wants to start a podcast or to really throw some gasoline on it, Luis' company is the one that you want in your corner. You don't need a producer. You need someone like him because what he provides is support to level you up in a way that is built off of experience. And it's not experience based off. If you do go after a producer, I have had clients that have done this, and this is why I'm saying this because I know someone out there thinking this. You do not need someone with radio experience. You need
Right.
someone that has podcast and digital experience in how to engage people in the digital marketplace. That is really, really important. And I mean, if you want to just say kind of like with podcast domination, like what do you necessarily like? How do you help? How do you
Yeah.
help your clients? Just because I think that
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand that there's services like yours out there, and I think that's really irritating. So kind of just like share some of the
Right.
things that you do help hosts with.
Sure. So we are two things we mainly help with. So number one, we're a plug and play or like kind of a white glove service agency. So outside of recording the audio, we take care of all the production from A to Z. So people record their audio, send it to us. We take care of everything outside of that. So we'll do the editing, publishing, the creating the social media assets for the show to promote it, and everything recorded or involved in getting your podcast up and
Right? Yeah.
everywhere in the world. Besides that, we help people scale their podcasts with paid traffic. So whether it's taking your landing page and retargeting the traffic from that's hit that landing page, so they can see your podcast, or creating lookalike audiences for your podcast. That's something we also do as well. So growing and scaling existing podcasts with paid media. Obviously, that's a higher tier service. So it's like that's really for a certain type of client or person who's ready to invest in their podcast with paid media. So those are the two main ways we help people podcasting: the done for you side, and then also the scaling and paid media traffic growth side.
Yeah, and let me tell you, anyone out there that wants to keep onto a schedule and they are going to, I know how to use GarageBand, and I'm going to edit it down. No, you're not, and you don't know how to use it. You're going to sit in there and you're going to look at your podcast 1 hour. You're going to spend 4 hours. It's going to still sound like shit. I'm telling you, find somebody to help you. It really does pay for itself. Think about all the time that you're going to try to do figuring it out, or even better, this is what drives me absolutely freaking crazy, when they give it to their marketing director to do, and their marketing director is now like this engineer of sound. It's like I have a degree in marketing. I never learned how to do that. So it really is. It does cut down. And also, if you are just recording and then it's finished and you just freaking send it to somebody else, it's like the best feeling ever. So I'm just saying, people, if you want to get started and you don't want to do everything a la carte in yourself, just I definitely say Podcast Domination is something you should check out. Louis, where can everyone find you and learn more about your company?
Best place to go is podcastdomination.co. Don't go to .com. That's not a website I know of. But podcastdomination.co is the best place to find us. Or I'm on Facebook, Luis Ryan Diaz. And then to your point, Christopher, about the marketing directors, we're usually the ones the marketing directors come to. I've had a lot of calls with marketing directors where they're like, yeah, they threw this podcast on me and I don't know what to do. So when you said that, I know exactly what you mean, because we're usually the ones getting on the calls with the marketing directors, which is funny.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was hilarious you brought that up.
No, it's well, look, come on, let's be honest, right? Like I will, if it's back pre-COVID, when there was these big major events like these marketing events, or whatever, they always are around a certain season, and there's always a lot of them at the same time. As soon as that season is over, I will be flooded with prospective phone calls from marketers who are like, my boss just said that I need to be doing LinkedIn. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Because obviously they sat in one session and they said LinkedIn's the best thing since sliced bread, and they came back and they said LinkedIn's the way to go. And it's the truth. I mean, gosh, that's why it's nice not being a marketer from a traditional company anymore. Just being an agency owner is so much better. Um, but excellent,
I hear
Luis,
you.
you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you so much for joining me on the episode
Thank you.
today. If you guys want to learn more and gals want to learn more about Luis and his company, please take a look at all of the links that are in the description of this show. Or if you're on gosalesandmarketing.com on our podcast page, all the links and also Luis's bio is there as well. So you can learn more as well as about his book as well. We have a couple coming up on the future episodes of the show. We have some really cool topics. I was looking into some TikTok subjects. Wow, everyone's excited about that. I am too. It's absolutely exhausting, that subject, but I'll bring it to you. And we'll talk about it on a future episode. So, folks, if you want to check out all of the past episodes, obviously like and subscribe and all that crap, but go to the website, gosalesandmarketing.com. Check out our blog page as well. I have lots of blogs on there that are extremely valuable. There's a free e-course. Take it, don't take it. I don't care. It's good information. But until next time, folks, thanks for joining us in the Social Marketing Academy. I'll take care. See you soon.